Hello UFO lovers! Today we'll be giving you our unique perspective on the Turkish UFO incident on Analyzing Today's UFO Clips, episode 37. Now, we know that this subject has been done to death, but today, here, we'll be giving you our perspective on this event. And to be perfectly clear, we're not here to debunk the case, nor are we here to prove that it's real. Our mission with this video is to pull from classic UFO knowledge and lore to explain what we might be looking at here. Think of this more as a thought experiment, geared strictly to UFO heads like us. We'll be referencing statements from other prominent UFO figures, and looking at other incidents to help piece this mystery together. I do want to remind everyone that we, the crew at We Love the UFOs, believe that everyone on Earth, with the exception of maybe a handful of people, actually know what's going on with this UFO mystery. We believe that people like top military and maybe private industry individuals, as well as perhaps elites, probably have a better idea of what UFOs really are. But to the rest of us, we're all just left out to speculate. And that's what we're going to be doing in this video, all while giving our perspective on this particular case. Last thing I want to say, and probably the most important thing, is that we're going to try to have fun with this topic. There are people out there that get very upset when talking about the subject, and immediately want to squash any evidence of something strange by calling it a hoax. Today, here, we'll be looking at this through the eyes of a UFO enthusiast and try to keep an open mind. So let's begin. In this analysis, we'll be concentrating on the zoomed-in shots taken of this now infamous object from various times it's claimed to have appeared. Let's have a run-through of some of these still shots. As you notice, we seem to be looking at an object that is half moon, or maybe boomerang in shape up in the sky, which kind of reminded us of this footage, in which we see something strange that's not a triangle, but more of a crescent shape of sorts. But going back to our snapshots. What we notice is that most of them are kind of different, and for a long time, since the video saw the light of day years back, the crew and I all thought that we were looking at something very strange, but never really dove deep into what we might actually be looking at. In some shots, it looks like a thin strip. In others, you can see small lights or maybe ridges at the bottom. Sometimes the edge looks round, sometimes elongated. In some shots, we believe we're looking at the lower half of the object. Then there's the famous shot of the ship with the opening, in which I want to call to the attention that it seems to have ridges off to the side. Then there's shots like these that don't even look like the craft, but then when we compare it to this picture, it does. So we thought to ourselves, why does this incident feature the same craft looking so differently? And we all came up with a thought that maybe what we're looking at in all these shots is an incomplete view of a larger craft. And the reason it looks so different in all these shots is because maybe we're looking at the different angles of an elongated disc. So the crew and I did what we normally do, and basing ourselves on the pictures, we pieced together a model of what we might be looking at. And here it is. Now, just so you guys know, none of us here at the team are professional 3D modelers, so forgive us for that. But we have to say we did our best. And with this model, we can actually reproduce shots from our UFO stills fairly decently. All we have to do is shine the light on it from certain angles, and we get very similar views that compare to the original stills. Let's go ahead and render a few. So in the original video, if what we're looking at is what we're proposing it is, an elongated disc, why is it that only part of the ship is visible? Well, again, in our 3D environment, we're able to produce this by shining a light on a reflective metallic surface. But what if, and here's where we have to put on our UFO head hats, we have to think, what if this thing is actually coming through some sort of dimensional portal and just peeking into this reality just for a bit? UFOs coming through portals have actually come up before in the story of Skinwalker Ranch. Let's briefly look at this clip.
Among the strange things that the rancher had seen in the sky were these really big, almost like a sun, a big orange orb that would appear once in a while on the property. And he would get out his scope, and on occasion, you look through these orange orbs, they're not orbs at all, like a hole in the sky. And on the other side was another sky, and it was different. If it was daytime here, it's nighttime over there. If it was daytime there, it was nighttime here. And occasionally, he would see things flying in and out of what looked like a portal.
And if we want to imagine that, we can make an example here with this 3D model as well. Or what about this? If you're a Star Trek fan, what if the ship is actually decloaking? And yes, I know that sounds highly improbable, but we might as well put that out there. So we're really interested to hear what you think about our elongated disc theory, or if you have one of your own, please let us know in the comments down below. Next, we wanted to look at the two figures in the opening of the ship. Again, we're going to be talking like UFO enthusiasts and saying that these are two gray aliens looking through this porthole. And the reason we wanted to talk about them is because we ran into some analysis from the nationalufocenter.com website where they go really deep into it. And maybe they have better quality video than we do because we didn't see any of these images in our video, but still we thought we'd share their perspective on what's going on through this opening. You can make up your own mind when it comes to these images here, and we'll reserve our comments to respect the website's and author's opinion. Now, the image that we've personally seen over the years is this one, and we want to stick to this one because we can see a clear head, eyes, and even a mouth of sorts. We also want to point out the figure off to the left, which seems to be kind of peeking around the corner, which in turn reminded us of Stan Romanek's alien. That is a video all to itself. But back to this shot. How many of you guys think that this is an actual alien creature we're looking at? Please leave your comments down below and let me know. Next, we want to comment on how this ship appeared on several occasions spanning years, and our thought, which is our unique perspective that we're sharing, is that perhaps the ship isn't coming back to the same spot, but is perhaps traveling through time. Let's refer to this clip from Bob Lazar and the frozen candle.
Really?
Before we talk about the test, one other thing about the reactor, and I want you to use this example to sort of explain how it worked. You had told me a story about a candle and flame that was basically frozen. Tell me that story and why it gives us an indication of how this thing operated, what power it had.
Well, when we had, after the golf ball incident, there was the benches we had set up. The reactor was not the only thing in the craft. The reactor sits in the center. On the level underneath, there are, the reactor. Surrounded by the reactor, there are 3 gravity amplifiers, as they were called. Directly under those, there are emitters, which are, probably like 55-gallon drums. There are 3 of them. They hang directly under the emitters, and apparently the way the device works, is the reactor supplies the base gravitational wave and power to the amplifiers, which channel it down to the emitters, which propel the craft. So, in addition to the reactor that was out of the craft, one of the emitters was also on the bench. Now, I don't know which craft this came out of. It was not out of the sport model, but they had the reactor operating and the emitter, and Barry had taken a candle and put it about, I'd say about 2 feet from the end of the emitter and lit the candle. And he fired up the reactor and he said, go check out the candle. And the flame was there, but it wasn't moving. It was like a picture of it. It was just frozen. And now that makes you think of a lot of things. Oh boy, we know gravity and time are interrelated, and one is essentially the other. And fine, if it stopped or slowed time down there, how are photons still being emitted so we can see the light? It should just go black. There are a lot of things made absolutely no sense whatsoever with the science we're familiar with.
So if what Lazar is saying is true, then perhaps the anti-gravity craft can actually manipulate time, and what the cameraman Murat Yalçın experienced over the years was actually just one event for the craft itself. What seemed like years to Murat was maybe just an instant for the ship. And again, that's basically just our theory and a thought experiment of sorts. Lastly, we wanted to talk just briefly about the debunking efforts that have been made over the years for this case. And I'll have to be completely honest with you. Over the years, I haven't kept up with all of the debunking attempts, but from what I remember, the prominent ones seem to be that this sighting is basically a cruise ship in the distance. But from these clips, I'd have to say this thing is up in the sky, so that would make this a pretty remarkable cruise ship. Then, there are videos like this one that are titled things like Turkey UFO fully debunked, or Turkey UFO debunked again, in which they attempt to say that this craft is merely an artifact created by the lens of the camera, and then they try to line up the part of the camera with the opening to the opening of the craft. But not only is the angle of the lens not in line with the UFO, but also how do you explain videos like this where they zoom into the object? Are they zooming into the camera lens in the distance? It just doesn't make much sense. But again, this isn't a debunking video, nor is it meant to validate this incident. We're merely putting out our perspective on what we might be looking at here. But you know what? I'll pass the question on to you. What do you guys think of this incident? And also, what do you think of our theory of the elongated disc? We're eager to see your comments down below. And that'll do it for this episode. If you like this video, please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of this content. And as always, this is Jesse. Share this content with like-minded UFO heads like us and let them know that we love the UFOs. Till next time.